Dave, who is in Austin. Dave actually called in last week, and he wants to give us an update about your situation. Can you kind of give us a brief recap on that, Dave?
It's Dave! Hi. Hi.
Hey, Dave, how's it going?
Oh, it's going good, yeah.
Cool, cool. Well,
Yeah.
you called into the show last week, and you were talking about stuff, and you kind of want to give us an update on that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
So basically, I heard from my dad that my Jehovah's Witness aunt is currently in Jerusalem.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, she's taking religion to the next level ever since she joined Jehovah's Witness, and she just got to Jerusalem. She's going to see all the Christian parts of it, and I was kind of interested of her going to Jerusalem. Like, I asked Dad if she can bring back some videos and photos, because I'm interested in Jerusalem. I'm not interested with the religion stuff. I'm interested in with the architecture. So, anyways, besides that, she's not having the best of times with relationships with outside, with with our family. Like, she's been constantly threatening to not do contact with us anymore, like what most Jehovah's Witnesses do.
So you've been in contact with her then, sounds like. I mean, it sounds like since she's going on this trip.
Yeah, it's Jerusalem. She's in another country. Fares are high,
Yeah, for sure. Well, those of you who don't know and are kind of getting updated on this conversation, we focused a lot on Jehovah's Witnesses last week. We had Telltale Atheist on, an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and Dave was kind of talking about his story with his family and how he was kind of having trouble with some people in his family who were believers and how he was not. And unfortunately, there's a practice of shunning people outside of your faith in the Jehovah's Witnesses that can cause some problems, as we were kind of talking about. And it's good to see that you've got to get a bit of an update on that.
So another thing, we got a new student in science class. So basically, we're learning about biology right now. You know what it is, like humans and stuff. And
I know what biology is, yeah.
Evolution stuff.
Yeah.
And this new student is actually she's not a Jehovah's Witness. No, she's like a fundamental Christian. You've heard of them?
I've heard of them.
And she's like, that's not how we came to be. God created us in 7 days, not in 4 million days. And she instantly got D-Hall for trying to indoctrinate everyone.
Yeah.
So she was saying this during class time?
Yes.
And what was the teacher's response?
She was completely silent during the entirety. I don't know what her religion is. I've never asked, because I think it's too uncomfortable for a question. And when she was done, the teacher's like, we're going to ask you to go out in the hallway. And as I heard from other students, she got D-Hall for about 2 days.
Put in detention, you mean?
Yes. We call it D-Hall.
I see.
And this is a public high school?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, that's one of that is actually an interesting thing in the States, that students are allowed to say such things. The teacher can never say anything one way or the other, but students are actually allowed to, and that's one of the things that some of these creations.
I know religion of any kind is allowed, and you're able to talk about it. But if you go to the point where you're shoving down everyone's throats, then it gets dirty.
Yeah. So that's an interesting topic of conversation, like Paul was saying about kind of the ethics behind. I mean, there was whole entire court cases that were defined on what you can teach and what you can't teach through this U.S. Supreme Court in schools. And of course, the law right now is, you know, we can teach science and we can teach things that are basically in the textbooks, and personal religious beliefs and stuff really can't be taught from public school teachers.
I'm looking into colleges right now, and like I've seen some that provide religion classes because they're like Christian schools, and I was looking at Rice University, and they offer a Jewish class for as a minor. And I was surprised. Like, you don't see that every day.
Yeah, that's interesting, especially probably where you're at too.
Yeah. So, anyways, more on religion. I'm basically like the only atheist member of the family. Like everyone else is Christian, and one of them is agnostic. And I'm too afraid to talk to this. Like my parents are Christians too, and I'm afraid to tell them I'm atheist. And like I just believe that atheism is natural. And you've seen have you ever seen Lloyd Evans' spiritual person's guide to atheism, and how he compared it to like going to a trip on France, and and you were like here, let me rephrase this. An electric company chose 7 people to go to France, and you were one of them. And one of the people who got chosen is one of the executives at the electric company's son, and he said that if whoever spent the least amount of money would have a permanent home in one of the Pacific Islands, and 6 out of the 7 opted this true and sustained themselves into their hotel rooms. And this actually is kind of like, it's definitely referring to atheism. Like, you know how like people subdue themselves if they're like in Christian or Islam, or like they're not allowed to say certain things, they're not allowed to do certain stuff. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's been a lot of great metaphors about how this, you know, religion can kind of control people sometimes. I'm trying to think of who wrote it. There's a great story about the story of the metaphor was a seagull flying in the air, who was trying to, there was a group of seagulls who said that you can't fly. This wasn't something that was allowed to do until the seagull actually tried to jump and fly himself and figured out that he could fly. It was kind of this metaphor of breaking free from the kind of groupthink that you can encounter, especially within religious circles. So I'm glad to find that you have a metaphor for you that kind of works for your experiences. I know me and Paul can definitely relate to that for sure.
And Dave, what do you think is going to happen if you, what do you expect is going to happen if and when you tell them?
This is like, I'm not sure, but I'm worried that they're going to hate me for
Ooh, well, Paul has a great answer for you here.
Are you still, I assume you're still financially dependent on your family?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So one of the things that, one of the considerations is, perhaps waiting for a while. I know that for me, the intellectual dishonesty kind of can chew at you a bit when you aren't being true to yourself. And I think there's lots of ways in life, various life, where we're not being true to ourselves. That's really hard. But you may have to, wait until you can. But one of the things that I've started to recommend to people is that you start talking about specific doctrines that maybe are on the fringe of what your parents think, and just say that just start introduce the idea that maybe you don't disagree with those or completely are online, just to see how they react and see how they react when, and what kind of conversations you can have just on something fringe and minor. So maybe like the nature of hell, or whether angels communicate with people, or and all those kind of things, and just kind of test the waters, so that when eventually you do tell them, when eventually you can be true to yourself, that it's not a complete surprise, and that maybe you can keep some of that relationship, and they'll understand that you're a valuable person, and that your ideas aren't a threat to them, that you've come to this thoughtfully, and it's not a reaction to something. That's just something I've been kind of sharing with people who are kind of in your situation, and it seems to be a good strategy.
Well, Paul's being modest here. You know, I thought he was going to talk about a video that he made recently about kids kind of, about talking to parents about religious beliefs and stuff. And I know that.
I'm sorry, but I want to talk about something else.
Well, we do have to get to some other callers tonight, though, Dave. But I do appreciate that.
One more thing. Please.
Okay. One last thing. Let's get it out there.
So there's this game series. I bet none of you have heard of this, but it's called Bit Trip.
Yeah, I've played it before.
And oh, you've heard of it?
Yeah, I used to play it.
The final game, Bit Trip Flux, tells like the entire story, like the entire game series is told metaphorically, and on the final game, Bit Trip Flux, we can see the main character's path to enlightenment, and things like he can see how he got created, and how he can overcome his anger in the afterlife. And at the very end of the game, we see him disintegrate. And to me, that I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Like path to enlightenment, something like that. I'm not too sure about that. But the game series didn't focus on any religion, how you preach to God or something, but it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, afterlife discussions are pretty prominent in religious circles, I'd say. It's kind of a running theme, and it's definitely a talk that, you know, we as atheists need to consider as well. You know, I mean, we've talked about this before on the show. I mean, it would be a whole other discussion if we really got into it. But yeah, my heart towards the conversation is, okay, like, well, what does the evidence show us of our afterlife experience, or if that's even a coherent statement, right? Is there an experience that we have after we die? And you know, my journey into that discussion has told me no. It doesn't seem like that there's any evidence that, you know, we have a soul, or that that anything is going to happen to me, Objectively Dan, after I die, because Objectively Dan will not be a thing anymore. But you know, there's going to be debate on exactly how that might happen. I think it's just kind of a go to sleep situation and never wake up, you know. But maybe Paul disagrees on that, or maybe he does agree. What do you think?
How it was before we were born.
Mm-hmm.
That's what all evidence says.
I think we're gonna get to other callers, but one tiny thing before we go, Paulogia.
Well, I'm sorry, Dave. We do have to get going here, but I do really appreciate you calling.
I just wanted to say, Paulogia, I saw you for the first time in the top list you did with that creepy rating, the top 22 insane Christian shows, and that's when I met Telltale Atheist too. And I'd like to thank you and Telltale for being in that list. If not, I would never have been to this point. So, all right, I shall be going.
Happy to help.
All right.
That means a lot. Thanks.
Right.
Thanks, Dave. Really appreciate the call. Man, that was really fun to hear back from people in their situations and stuff like that, and where it's going. Sounds like Dave has a lot to think about on, you know, his family situation and stuff. I mean, it's similar to what we've gone through. I know we both talked about that, but it's definitely different in a Jehovah's Witness context, for sure.
Yeah, the shunning, as I understand it, the shunning level can be. I'm fortunate that even though I lost a lot of friends and that kind of thing, my closest family, really stuck by me, even though we worked through some disagreements. So I was fortunate. Yeah,
you can definitely count our blessings, quote unquote. when we look at our experience